Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am going to just jump in, trusting that more folks will join us. It's early in the morning here on the West Coast. So I want to begin by welcoming you all. I want to thank you for the presence of your time and your heartbreak, your rage, your breath, your wonder, and your radical imagination. As we spend this construct of time that we'll call an hour in communion with Bayo Akomolafe and meital yaniv, two visionaries that I have illuminous respect and appreciation for, as they discuss Meital's most recent and most urgently published book, Bloodlines, which is a prayer for the land and people, past, present, and future of Palestine. A prayer for the liberation of Palestine, and I'll say the hospicing of the Israeli identity, to use Vanessa Machado de Oliveira's words. My name is Taisha Paget, and I have the great honor of moderating this gathering, helping hold the container, along with you all who are here. To begin, we have decided to forego the sharing of biographies, which are often demonstrations of professional accolades and entrepreneurial efforts. I think each of us take up that practice in more critical and divergent ways. But nevertheless, we would instead like to open with a prayer or invocation. But before I transition us there, I would be remiss to not extend appreciation to the co-sponsors of today's gathering. And this includes the UC Riverside Department of Black Study, the Department of Dance, the Department of Media and Cultural Studies, the Department of Gender and Sexuality Studies, Crystal Peck, the Decolonizing Humanism Initiative at the Center for Ideas in Society and Humanities and Disability Justice Initiative. And of course, I like to bring into the circle the Memory and Resistance Laboratory, which is the publisher of Bloodlines. I also want to let everyone here know that the Q&A feature will be available throughout this time together, and you're invited to offer your questions, perhaps some answers. But we've chosen to disable the chat for the first part of this gathering, just as a way to gather our energies and honor the developing conversation. So, beginning with a prayer or invocation. Meital or Bayo, would you like to begin? Meital.
I will start with gratitude for the land that I sit on in this moment, surrounded by beings and plants and minerals, waterways and mountains, deep-rooted fire and deep-rooted practices that I have the privilege and honor to humbly learn as I walk here as a guest. And would like to extend that invitation to walk as guests all over this planet, all over this world, this earth that is cycling through space in this very moment. May we remember this space we move through to meet each other. Calling upon the sun that is setting on the precious land of Palestine as we are awakening and rising here. Calling upon the tunnels, the underwater ways, the undercurrents, the mycelium structures that are finding the roots of trees that are being burned and bombed, and trees that are being offered water and care, and trees that are nourishing us through their death and through their life. Calling upon the beings that can support us to break open even more, to break free, to break open even more, to break free so that all that do not serve this planet can die and shed and undone and stitch itself away from the hearts of our beings. May we meet this day or this night, this time, this moon rising, this sun setting, this sun rising and moon setting as one continuum of our very presence of being a part of an entire ecosystem that needs us to remember that with each breath, that we share that breath with a tree that our ancestors have decided to burn or plant. And may we hold each other closer and cry deeper and grieve for generations, holding the nervous systems of every child, elder, being that is hearing bombs explode in this very moment. Holding your nervous system with the care that I know, with the care that I do not yet know, and calling upon the breakage of my entire being to be able to hold you even deeper.
Prayer is an art form. It's an art form that doesn't begin with human expressions. Oh no, it begins way before we start to speak. It's curdled in oceans of milk, in yearnings secreted by bees, in the cracks and ecotones of ecosystems in inquiry. Prayer is the secretion of a world in yearning. It is the world as art, the world worlding itself. And so we pray, not to reach somewhere, but to arrive at different articulations of ourselves, to reworld the world molecularly. I pray at this time that as the world shudders in the turbulence of war, as our skins spill, and as death cries across the landscapes, sending its messenger, the nomad grief, the cartography of loss, zigzagging across the familiar. I pray that the spilt, the blood of the spilt, will convene radical notions of hospitality and care that the fury of this moment cannot articulate. I pray that we will be held as we fall apart together. I pray that the notions of belonging that have incarcerated us within the global Westphalian project of homemaking that has domiciled us within the nation state. That project would be composted in fungal dispersals, in new inquiries of how we are together with each other. I pray that the binaries that propose and support the infrastructure of violence as a dualism between a stable perpetrator and an even stabler victim will give way to a politics of the third way, redeeming us from the violence of this room that we have been shackled to. And that we will trace emancipatory pathways through the bloodlines of our griefs, our yearnings, our hopes, and the prayers that our mouths cannot carry, at least not alone. Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you for that rich tapestry of prayer technology. I will offer an acknowledgement to, yes, the minerals of our bones and earth and those precious minerals pressed into these devices. Acknowledgement of the realm of blood labor and exploitation of our siblings in the Congo and other reaches of Central Africa. And to extend this prayer to the drops of blood and DNA inscribed into the motherboard beneath our typing fingers that allow us to be here together. Thank you, meital. Thank you, Bayo, so much for your work, for your voice, for your vision. And this is quite a auspicious coming together. And we made a bold decision to do this quite improvisationally, which is its own type of prayer. Yes. And yes, and I'll just offer a question and pass it over to you to dance your hearts and words and vision together. And what I'm thinking about is a conversation that I heard recently with Angela Davis, who was discussing how we can approach the violence of this moment. And she offered this reminder that radical Black feminist critical methodologies teach us to always ask the other question. If it's an issue about race, to ask about gender. If it's an issue about class, to ask about sexuality, and so on. So that we're always aware of and connecting through the complexities of a given issue. And I see in the work of bloodlines and the work of that comes from your heart, Bayo, that you both are always asking us to engage a different way of looking and approaching the problems of the moment. So as we extend our prayer for the liberation of Palestine and beyond, I would like to open this by asking you, what is the other question? What's not being talked about? How might we approach this moment differently?
Mhm. Thank you. I will start by saying that the first thing that just, as you were reading that quote from Angela Davis, the first thing that came to me is love. And how might we be able to ask about love right now? And I think there's a way in which we also need to decolonize that word and find other sounds, because it's been commodified to something that feels like we can buy or take or arrive at. And I think there's something about that feeling, though, of love that we all really, really know in our DNA structure. And I will share that I dream a lot. I'm a dreamer, and I haven't been dreaming at all since October 7th. And I started dreaming again this past 2 weeks, and I am waking up from a night for the first time of dreams where I have been throughout the entire night in the West Bank, intervening between situations between soldiers and Palestinians. And there's so many details in that. But what I bring back into this other question is this understanding that when I was screaming, talking, intervening, holding back the soldiers, when I look in their eyes, I love them because I know them. And it's a very hard love to maintain right now, because I see images that make me want to hate, but because I am in this body and that shape is really familiar in this body, I am able to also find love there. And when I find the love, I also find where that love became toxic, because we became soldiers through love too. We became soldiers through the love of our grandmothers because they were threatened. And in order to threaten them, an enemy had to be created. And once you create an enemy that is big enough to take away all of your grandparents, you'll do anything. And that is like in the psyche of a child. So we grow up from that psyche of a child, and there's other ways to maintain that shape on our bodies. And it feels kind of awful in my body right now that we're starting this conversation focusing on the soldiers. Like I feel that like my body is like, why are we starting here? Like that's not fair. And yet there's something about the notion of love that has been so misconstructed, misunderstood, that I mean, I was loved with so much toxin in that love, but the love is real. And if I can like go into that breath milk and like swim in it and move away the particles, I can find the essence and let go of the rest. And through that essence, I think we need to ask about love that is beyond, like love is endless, it's infinite, and yet our shapes are allowing us or giving us the code switching, the underwater maps to find love for people that most of the world is hating. So how do we like tend to that? I'll hold here for a sec.
Thank you, meital. Love is a parliamentary project. It's a project of federations of beings and becomings in their relations. What I'm trying to say is love doesn't proceed in my reckoning from stable essences. It's how we pair up and what's available when we pair up and build alliances of some kind. I learned from the great John Powell of the Alvin and the Longan Institute. He told a story last year, in Berlin. I was there to speak, and I cannot remember all the details, but I remember him speaking about a woman who was also in a situation where she had to love hard, like you, Meital, where she had to face what would have been conveniently designated her enemies. And she did it. And when people seem to ask about her secrets, why she did it so seamlessly and lovingly, why she loved lovingly, I think she said she drank. That alcohol made it easier. And I remember telling myself, but of course, we think of ourselves as isolated, but we have always been a companion species. And so that brings me to notice this. The kinds of loving and the love relationships that are happening within modernity are the relationships that prohibit us from noticing how interrelated we are, because they begin from me, a stable self, you, a stable self, right? The kinds of loving that I'm hoping to see, and the questions that could come from that, Tasha, have to do with how violence, especially the violence of these moments, violence cannot be reduced to isolated human actions. Violence is a property of arrangement and organization. I like to put it this way, that the poison is not in the pot. The poison is the pot. You ask me, what question are we not asking? Well, the questions we are asking have to do with how do we stop, and rightly so, how do we stop this incredible suffering? How do we help and support and build solidarity, especially, but not, as Meital beautifully says, not excluding our siblings in Israel, but also especially for the people in Palestine? How do we construct solidarities that make differences? It seems the kinds of arrangements we're in frame our agency and the agency of the moment in terms of the people in the room, the actors in the room. And so we normatively retrace identities along the lines that the city, that white modernity teaches us to trace them out. We retrace those lines over and over again, including us that are longing for some kind of peace. I think a question we're not really staying with is, what if the room is an actor? This is what Meital holds in the book, speaking about this diaspora and the state of settlement. What if the notion of home that we have so committed ourselves to, that we have lost in the questions we always ask. One-state solution, two-state solution. What if the state is the poison? What if it has constructed us in ways that does not pay homage and does not honor the memory of loss, the intergenerational quality of trauma, the ways that ancestrality breeds in the present? What if, even in our attempts to fix the crisis, we are scaffolding the crisis and preserving it, even with best intentions?
Thank you. I'm thinking about the notion of dreaming, acting from the cracks, and the notion of how your book has its first conclusion of really this prayer to the death of the Israeli identity. And it makes me think about what it means to love in the dark, and to allow ourselves to really like learn how to breathe underwater and act from our heart, but from a place of not knowing, as like the only way to drop these scripts, these etchings, these state lines, these national identities, lest we continue to repeat the same thing that we're trying to destroy. I guess that makes me want to open up the question of what questions do you have for each other right now? Meital, do you want to start?
Yeah. I'm bringing a question to a teacher right now, Bayo. And I know we met recently, but I feel like you've been helping me shape myself in so many ways. And it's a question I'm not even sure that we need to answer, but it's a question I came to last night. And in this, in this cycle, there's been so many moments of despair and hope, and so many moments of feeling movement, feeling breakage, feeling grief, and moments of just, what are we doing? And yesterday, after finishing an interview, I had this moment of like, what are we doing? Like, some of us are being killed and murdered and martyred in the most horrific ways, and some of us are sitting here talking about it. And it makes me come back to this, what you just said about like, how do we know that we're not just recreating the same power structure by talking about it, in trying to dismantle it? So yeah, so I guess I feel like this conversation for me kind of started last night, and then I went into this dream space, and now I'm waking up to this, and I'm still holding this. Like, bloodlines ends with me bringing 2021 to this, with me bringing this moment, because I wrote the book in 2021, so bringing this cycle into the end. And it ends with a list of names of Palestinian martyrs that I knew of the day that we sent it to print. So some have names and some have marks, because we didn't have the names yet for the entire worlds that are being destroyed. And I'm continuing that count on Bloodlines website, where I'm gathering names and just holding the numbers and learning how to hold the numbers. And again, it brings me into this question of like, how is it that some of us are witnessing, talking about this? There's like a public need to talk about this. And at the same time, our kin, our siblings are being torn into pieces in ways that like we can barely watch. Yeah.
So your question, my dear meital, has to do with solidarity and how to respond in these times, especially when it feels like the way we respond actually produces the same reality. Is that a fair articulation?
Or produces something that produces a reality that I don't know, that it's not just maintaining what we're trying to break, right? Like how many times will I, wear the avatar of the Israeli soldier that I was 20 something years ago to tell that story so that I can be qualified to talk about this, so that someone will listen to me when I say that this is the most wrong we can ever do, right? And like, how many more words can we find to try to explain that this is not the way for any kind of safety or belonging or love or anything, right? So I think my question is, like, the solidarity feels like clear, that being a part of a movement feels clear in us trying to imagine otherwise. I know that we can't, right, arrive there. That's why we're trying to imagine otherwise. But how do we know that this taking up of this air is not just putting the power in the power, more power?
Do we know? I don't know that we can know, meital. I don't know that there is a place to stand that is safe, that is subsidized by guarantees that whatever we might say or do is starved of the potential to reinforce troubling realities, right? We might look at the images coming from the Middle East and our skins crawl. I know mine has. And your stomach turns upside down and you sometimes want to lean away. Most of us tell ourselves we have to do something about it. And so we take up our arms, our pens and papers, and our phones, and we get on Twitter, because not everyone is mutually available in the same way. The world isn't just the world is a river of processes. And so it isn't singular or stable. And so solidarity is not a universal thing. It's not a monolith. Because the world is wild, it has to look different. And so from wherever we are, we take up whatever is around us to try to do something about it. Of course, we have good intentions. We have particular specific readings. All of us are seemingly called by this moment, right? No one is left out of it. We are all called into it. Of course, unfortunately, most of the time it seems that we're called into some kind of a game of sides. And we're asked to either establish alliance in form of a versus kind of game. You're either for this or for this. You're either for that or against that. It's a tribalism that repeats itself. And echoes the liberal humanist inadequacies of this moment, right? And so we write and we call our senators and we hit the streets and we form an ethnography, a line of solidarity, so to speak. The thing here is solidarity always exceeds us. It doesn't come from stable agents. It is how we swim in a world that exceeds us. So it is often the case that we're swimming in waters that have already been deployed to reinforce the structures of war, right? War is buoyant. Suffering and oppression is buoyant because of the ways we often show up. It's ironic, it's sometimes even paradoxical, that the ways that we address a situation can actually lead to the repetition of that situation. I'm thinking of the story of return that is echoed in many narratives about going to the homeland, Israeli Jews going from the diasporic European continent and going back home. This is the story. And homecoming is articulated as a right within a Westphalian global state order. I'm thinking about how that notion of home did not allow our brothers and sisters to notice the violence of homemaking that is implied in the state, and did not allow us to see all the rituals, all the rites of passage, all the things that keep on repeating themselves when we say or do something. That there are other algorithms and patterns that we're swimming in when we insist on a particular way. And so the philosopher Foucault might have said that even solidarity could be a form of biopolitical control. And the alternative is not to retreat into some kind of numbing purity where we're divorced from everything, because that would repeat the colonial project. We have to make do with the fact that we are imbricated and entangled with this in ways that do not offer guarantees. And yet, there's something liberating about that, meital, about noticing that we have no guarantees. We can risk tentatively. We can experiment with inquiry. We can probe here and there, and we can listen. I feel this is a time to listen. I think it's a time not just to listen to other human beings, including the ones that are in the deep throes of suffering. I think it's a time to listen to the world around us, because it is the radioactive coloniality of the man, what Black scholars will call the man. It is the radioactive coloniality of the man that is repeating, and in this intoxicating trance that we have arrived. Modernity is the story that we have arrived. And so this order is held together by the man, by the anthropos. What we want to do is to listen to the more than human world. Solidarity has to be animist. Solidarity has to be coming beside ourselves. Solidarity has to be an art project beyond the artist. Solidarity has to look like a straying away, a getting lost together. Solidarity has to be an interrogation of settlement wherever we are settled. It doesn't matter where, if you're settled in the Middle East or in the Americas or in Africa. The project of settlement is in crisis. The notion of belonging is the one in crisis right now. The idea that we have found a perch that we can land on permanently and claim to be ours using the language of capitalist extractivist relations, that's what's in crisis. That's what's in crisis. This is more than a game of sides or a game of identity. This is a game of a sensorium, a larger force, a tehomic force, a primordial force that is keeping us tethered in its morality, incarcerating us in repeatability. And so the time is ripe for us to congregate at the sites of not knowing. The time is right for us to gather at the agnostos theos, the place where we don't know, the gods we don't know how to name, the unknowable futures, the illegible futures. That's where we have to experiment with discontinuity and continuity. That's where we have to bring forth our failures, because we might achieve a ceasefire, meital. We might achieve a ceasefire. We might even achieve a two-nation-state solution, but we would only have postponed the violence to other aspects of the body. Just in the same way, I believe fervently that the Israeli homecoming was just a postponement of the Holocaust tragedies and a regurgitation of those traumas, so that it now has no place to travel.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
I want to extend the opportunity to Bayo if you have a question to share with meital. And at the same time, I would like to invite the chat to be opened, and the Q&A has been open since the beginning, and if anyone has a question that we might have time to bring into this container, you're welcome to offer it, and we'll see how we do with the time we have remaining. But before I open up to those questions, Bayo, is there something that is on your mind, heart? Please, thank you.
Yes. I've often, you see, dear sister, I've often described myself as a recovering psychologist, many other times a recovering Christian, a sense in which I'm struggling and playing with ethical fugitivity from the containment of morality. I'm deeply touched by your courage, meital.
Mm-hmm.
Your book is a strange act of marronage from particular frameworks of belonging. And I say it's an act of courage, not to deify you. This courage must be a gift. This courage to speak in the ears of others what might seem as against your own people, in the eyes of others as against your own people. My question is more how you are dealing and being sustained and nurtured and nourished as you take these courageous steps to do what many of us might feel hesitant to do.
Mm-hmm. I will start by saying I don't know.
Good answer.
You know, it's something that I tell my parents and family a lot. Everything that I'm doing is coming because I love us so much. It's you know, courage is an interesting word because courage to me is associated like through the mechanism of this realms we're in. It's associated with this realm of hero and heroism.
Yeah.
And that is something that I really had to like, you know, in the book I'm saying like eating my own shit, like that's a part of what I had to eat and like digest and undo. That notion of becoming like this like hero. Um so I think courage to me is an inevitability. It's I've learned to like, I feel like my heart has been my teacher, and that heart loves deep. And from that deep love, I must speak the truth. And the truth is what is being, I think, associated with courage. But it's my truth. I've lived through this and I've survived it by some miracles that I every day say thank you to, because I am able to love today, like myself, this earth, my puppies, my partner, my family, my friends, people I don't know, the donkeys that live where I live. Like I am able to love in this way that makes me want to speak to the people that I love so that we can love each other in that frequency. So you know, I don't feel like I am, as some will say, like airing the dirty laundry with this book. I feel like I'm actually using my own blood and scars and fragments and memories and the taste of my own shit to offer us a way to love each other, to see each other. And it must be from a liberated heart. And the Israeli identity and the Israeli state will never let us get there. So we must cease. You know, the ceasefire should be us ceasing from ourselves. Should be like us ceasing from these borders, us ceasing from these identities, us literally, you know, I was throughout my childhood, there was like this trauma that like, if I don't become this hero, I'm going to be thrown into the sea with everyone else. Like, I want to invite everyone in Israel, let's just swim in there. Let's just get in there. You know, that biggest fear that we hold, what happens if we just literally as a people, just let's go in, you know? Who knows? Maybe there's a new Moses who will come, you know, like how do we like seize to this place where we are able to find love, you know? Like I there's a way in which when we come to this from love, we are also able to offer the biggest offerings of generosities and care because it comes from love. So if I will be asked to leave the state, I will do it from love because I know the state needs to heal without me, right? So how do we keep speaking that truth from the places that we are able to heal and encourage each other to heal more? I also have so much more healing to do. This shape, this indoctrination, this brainwash, my entire life will be spent on doing it. That's how deep it goes. So how do we really take care of that in like a generational way? And in terms of how I take care of myself, again, I think I'm learning. I think I'm being asked to fail and learn every day. It's been extremely hard. It's been extremely hard to remind myself that even just my daily practices that keep me in my breath have been hard to practice, and finding more and more ways to stay accountable to them, to my prayers, to stay accountable to this body that you know, I keep coming back to Rafat El Arir, the poet in Palestine that was murdered. If I must die, you must live. What does it mean to live right now? And how, again, coming back to that question of like, we are here talking about it. How do we do this with integrity, with humility, with presence, with rest, right? So to be accountable to my practices is also to be accountable to how I show up, knowing that I am showing up from the heart broken and not from my mind that is trying to go into autopilot and just answer these questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Meital. Thank you, Bayo. We're climbing our way toward the end of this time together, and I do want to honor a question that has come in, and maybe this could be an invitation for some closing thoughts. It kind of takes us back to where we were a couple moments ago, but I think it's important because I think it really resonates with the question that's in a lot of people's hearts. So this is here. It says, I have struggled hard with being asked to call my US representative to ask for a ceasefire. I've lost and have zero hope in the government. This convo makes me wonder what your thoughts are about if investing energy in these calls and emails is one way that we are reinforcing the ills of the world. Is this an example of actions we take to help that, when we zoom out, actually support the ongoing colonial project?
Meital, do you want to go?
Sure, I can start. I think for me, in those moments, I return to mainly Black feminist abolitions, and queer theory. And one person that comes to mind is Miriam Kaba, who I'm gonna paraphrase right now, but is basically saying, like, of course we don't trust the systems. Of course we don't trust the government. Of course we know that those systems and those governments are not gonna exist in the future. But from the place of within them, we still need to fight for the people that can't. So it's like, yeah, we want to abolish prisons, but prison also exists. So how do we help make prison less exist until it completely is gone, kind of thing? And, I think I'm with you. I am getting those emails and I'm writing those emails to my representatives, and sometimes I can't, and sometimes I can, and sometimes it feels hopeless. It makes me depressed sometimes to do so. And yet, I think it also is a question of positionality, where in the reality of this realm, Israel cannot afford the occupation, the genocide. Just in terms of money, in terms of this capitalistic nightmare we're in. So to get the US to stop funding Israel is one way we put a clog in the system. To get the US to support BDS and sanction Israel is one way we put a clog in the system. And as Bayo was saying, it's like a temporary time freeze. And in that temporary time freeze, we also must do the work of the healing, right? So my hopes is that the US makes us seize so that I can invite my people into the sea, but that seize has to come from outside, because how else will we seize? So I think there's a both and there. I think there's so many ways to show up right now, and I don't think that there is one way. I don't think that if you're not sending those emails, you're doing something wrong, or if you're not going to the protest, you're doing something wrong, or if you're not writing about this on your social media, you're doing something wrong. But I think what I want to invite everyone is to care deeper. because it's from that caring deeper, from allowing our heart to break wider and opener, and then we find the grief practices. And from those grief practices, we get to find the ways that we can actually show up that are authentic to ourselves. And when I say imagine otherwise, it's also like, how do we imagine otherwise with our best friends, within our communities? How do we grieve together in ways that maybe are embarrassing to us, that maybe are unknown to us? And from that place, we find a way to show up differently because we're carrying through all this like muck that was given to us. And it's kind of impossible. Like if I think about this time frame since October, Taisha and I were talking about this. We are asked to function normally, go to work, show up for this, go to this, get the mail out of the mail. You know, like we're like, there's all these things we're supposed to do. And also there's an extra layer of just holding this grief, being with this, being tuned to it. How can I show up? What can I do? So we are actually like pulled so beyond our capacity right now. And from that, I think there's an invitation to really show up otherwise. And I don't know what that means. And I think we need each other for that. But I think if you don't want to write a letter today, that's totally fine. That's your truth for today. But what is another practice that can help really help dive into the undercurrent of something today?
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, there's a lot there. Going into the ocean, that just sparked a lot of things and images for me. But this will be my closing comments. As a child growing up in Nigeria, for those who don't know where Nigeria is on the African continent, I was fascinated with the pressure cooker. My mother would cook. I still remember the first time I saw a pressure cooker. And of course, because it made this loud noise, this whistling loud noise, I was drawn to it. And my mother kind of explained the basics of how it worked, that it cooked faster. Those were her words, it cooked faster. And it did this by containing the pressures, the moisture in that sealed space within the pot. I've spoken to many times about pots in our conversation later, but somehow the pressure cooker cooked faster. And so I asked my mother, why the letting out of the pressure? And she said, well, if it doesn't let it out, it would explode. And I was reminded about this when someone compared, I can't remember who it was, but compared ceasefires to the letting out of the pressure cooker. That somehow that was still constitutionally connected to what the pot was trying to do, to contain, to keep in place. I heard this from a brother, Mustafa, in Jenin, who spoke with me a day before, me and some others, a day before he was arrested and taken away along with his family. We haven't heard from him since. He said, I don't want their peace. I don't want their peace. I don't want their ceasefires. Because it's still, I'm paraphrasing now, it still nourishes the shush. I think he called it the shush of the West. Like, this is what we are imposing on you. This is how the peace is going to look like. And this is what you must accept. He said, I don't want that. And it was just this powerful orientation within the lived worlds of people, siblings in this situation. So if ceasefires are constitutionally connected to troubling continuity. Does that mean we stop asking for it? No. Meital, you said it so beautifully and eloquently. It's not a wrong or right thing here. It's not about saying, oh, we're going to stop asking for it then. We are all effectively differentiatedly enlisted in what solidarity might yet become in this moment, so that there isn't a yellow brick road or highway that leads from A to B, whatever A and B are. But I would like to signal this very strange, sensuous solidarity, this crustacean solidarity. Crustacean because it walks sideways instead of the frontal assault of neurotypicality, and how we frame solidarity from this frontal perspective. About the trickster god from the Yoruba pantheon that traveled with Black bodies across the Atlantic. And you reminded me of that a while ago when you said, I want to take my people into the waters. The stories about the Igbo people walking into the waters rather than give their bodies to the plantation, they walked into the waters. It was a stranger kind of solidarity. Eshu traveled with the slaves is the story we tell ourselves. It was an act of radical accompaniment. It wasn't an act of guarantees or safety. It was a different kind of sidling the logic of containment. If we understand that there are no guarantees, there's no through line, there's no fast lane, if we understand that we're all called into this, whatever we might do, in ways that are possibly beyond intention, then maybe there are other things to do on the side. And this side is not a useless side. It is a beautiful and rapturous side. Maybe there are things to do that call into being this idea of radical hospitality and radical accompaniment. Maybe we're being asked to compost in the ways that we can, the little ways that are available to us, the structures of coloniality, the idea of the anthropos, the idea of arrival. Maybe we do that by grieving together. Maybe lamentation is a new form of activism. Maybe the world is still researching itself and the answers we seek are not yet available. Maybe the cosmos is teenage and awkward and it doesn't exactly know how to deal with this, and we're in the awkwardness of it together. But maybe the thing to do is to experiment with the edges of this awkwardness. Whatever it is, it will take us to edges of what we know, and it will probably lead us into oceans, milky oceans. But whatever the case may be, may our road be rough, and may the roughness of this time be a sanctuary to us. Ashe.
Ashe.
I think we're in African time now.
We are indeed. And I want to just thank you again from every part of me, Bayo and Meital, for this incredible invocation, for the deep well and deep prayers that you both walk with. And thank you to everyone who offered their time to be here with us today. And I'll allow folks to say their goodbyes and so longs, and until the next opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Taisha. Thank you, Meital.
Thank you so much, both of you.